I travel in the 4th Regiment, my brother's by my side. Our captain.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 765 with a review of Civil War. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week in the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. This week, we are talking about the latest film from Alex Garland, that is Civil War. And before we get started, Stephen, what the hell was up with the rollout of this film? Because I know that, you know, due to the state you were in, you might not have been trying to book tickets early for this or anything, but It seemed like, with Alamo Drafthouse at least, they had one screening a day all the way up until the night it released, and then they added some extra screenings on the weekend, and there were all the small theaters, and I was like, are you guys still pissed about men? like what were they programming this against that took all the main screen viewings of this?
Yeah, I don't know if well I actually have some of the answers for that, but I don't know why they did this, because I did recognize this too. Like 2 weeks ago, I tried to book tickets for Civil War, and it was like 2 screenings a day, one early morning, one late at night in a tiny theater. And I was like, that is odd. And I did then book tickets, and I saw what they were programming. But so I think Dune is still in theaters, so that is taking some of the big auditorium still. But I'll tell you another movie I watched in the giant auditorium at 7 p.m. on a Saturday, and it's Sasquatch Sunset. So they are... Something about that Alamo recommends is making them bump that up. Because, Civil War is clearly the big movie of the weekend. I mean, it premiered in IMAXs, right? Like, I believe it was number 1 at the box office.
Yeah, and I saw it in IMAX, and like the only time I go to the Metron anymore because of where I moved to, like, is for seeing something in IMAX. And this is the first time I've been in like a half-empty IMAX theater. And I was like, this is blowing my mind right now. Like, this seems weird. It seems like I don't know something, or everybody's like, San Francisco's not going to care about a Civil War movie.
I got to tell you, a small part of me, and I don't know if there has been discourse about that in this movie, but if you remember when Joker premiered, people were kind of worried that the imagery of Joker would create an unsafe environment in a theater. Yeah. And a small part of me, not small enough to not see this, and certainly in a Alamo Drafthouse theater, I wasn't that worried, but a small part of me was like, I don't know if I would want to be in a massive screening of this movie right now. I don't know why. I don't know if I'm the only one who had that instinct, but I just felt like there was a lot of very violent imagery, and there are many deranged people in the country, and I know these things don't cause each other, but there was just something that felt unsettling about being in a massive theater for it.
I'm gonna be honest, that thought didn't even cross my mind, and now it's really thinking about it.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad we didn't talk beforehand then. I didn't want to yuck your yum.
I had really good seats in that theater too. I had the exact seats that I wanted.
Yeah. Great visibility.
Yeah. Great eye lines.
Exactly.
For snipers.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, I should be clear. That is, I believe, a totally irrational fear. Like, just because a movie traffics in imagery does not mean it is going to make it more likely that someone does anything. But there's just something about it where I liked the coziness of a tiny Alamo Drafthouse theater for this movie. I felt more secure and more safely among the Western forces, basically. I knew what side I was on in the hipster beer drinking upstairs tiny theater.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right. Well, now that we got that out of the way, and that thought's rolling around in the back of my head.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone.
What do you say we get into our review of Civil War?
Let's do it.
All right. We're going to take a listen to the trailer for Civil War and then come back and give you a review.
19 states have seceded.
The United States Army ramps up activity.
The White House issued warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
Let me know if you want to try anything on.
I guess aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America.
We just try to stay out. With what we see on the news, seems like it's for the best.
Citizens of America, the so-called Western forces of Texas and California have suffered a very great defeat at the hands of the United States military.
Mr. President, do you regret the use of airstrikes against American citizens?
We're moving to D.C. today.
We need to go down there.
They shoot journalists on sight in the Capitol. Every instinct in me says this is death.
Flooded.
Every time I survived a war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here. What? Well, you're American, okay?
Okay. What kind of American are you? You don't know?
The Western forces will reach the White House on July 4th.
Oh my God.
Get in the car! Get in the car!
We're gonna hang back.
I'm not hanging back.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America.
All right, so that was the trailer for Civil War. It follows a number of war journalists as a civil war is happening in the United States as they move across the country to kind of document what's happening. Stephen Miller, what did you think of Civil War?
Yeah, I, like probably many people, feel mixed about this movie, but unlike many people, I feel mixed in a mostly positive direction, I think. Look, I mentioned Joker before and how the imagery Joker trafficked in created a kind of controversy at the time. It was seen as irresponsible. And with Joker, I watched it and felt like, well, all that was for nothing. Like, we shouldn't have been afraid. Like it's fine. The movie handles it just fine. It isn't that provocative. It isn't that whatever. And Civil War, I kind of feel similarly, where the feeling going into this movie was, wow, they are trafficking imagery about like different sides of America murdering each other, like chaos, sieges on the Capitol, attacking the president, lots of very, very, very heavy imagery. And there was a little bit of a fear of like, how incendiary is this going to be? Like, how aggressive and provocative will it be? And having seen the movie, I feel like the answer is it really isn't. I mean, it is provocative in a way, but not in a political way, not in a creating division or gleefully showing a realistic portrait of how we might fall apart way. Like, yeah. Alex Garland is not interested in doing any of that. He is not trying to clarify what caused the Civil War or paint stereotypes of what one side or the other are like and where they agree and where they differ. I mean, some of it exists, but there's kind of like a both sides borrow aspects of the American left and right. There's no one-to-one mapping in this world with our world. And I don't really think the movie he created it's unsettling in a degree, but I didn't feel irresponsible or any of the things that I was personally afraid of watching it. What it is instead is a movie about war and wartime photography and journalism, and maybe more generally the aspect of observing the most difficult, unpleasant truths at the heart of a society and just the weight of that and how it feels to absorb that weight and live through it. And I think it is a very interesting movie that Alex Garland is trying to make here about like the numbness or the callous that you need to put on to allow yourself to look at the world. There's a refrain that happens a few times where people are like, where are your parents? Oh, my parents are at a farm in Missouri pretending none of this is happening. Yeah. And I think there's a sense in which this is kind of the anti-zone of interest, which I didn't think about until right this second, where zone of interest was about people ignoring, horrific, blinding tragedy. This is about the numbness that it takes to look horrific, blinding tragedy in the face and grapple with it. This is about, like, what does it feel like to see all of that and choose to be someone who sees and experiences it. And the civil war of the title is almost just a backdrop to that broader story about, it's like the Hurt Locker almost. It's like being addicted to the action and the aggression and being committed to just giving yourself over to it in some capacity. I thought it flowed in a kind of dreamlike way, which I'm sure will alienate people, but I think is actually fitting for Garland's style and the story he wanted to tell. And I think when the movie wants to be difficult or tense, it is very good at doing that. Like there's a moment in the trailer that we just listened to where Jesse Plemons says, like, you know, they say they're Americans, and he's like, what kind of American are you? And in the trailer, that's seen as like the holy shit moment of, this is America breaking apart. This is such a horrifying question. And I always thought in the trailer that felt a little overblown. It's like, yeah, of course he's saying that. It's a civil war. Like, there are two sides in America. Of course he's asking what kind you are. Like, why is this being seen as a mic drop moment? In the movie, the way that scene plays out is like 1,000 times more demented and horrifying than the way it plays out in the trailer. And yeah, this is just a movie of extremes. It is a movie that shows aggressive violence. It shows people being hateful to each other. It shows the kind of the way people involved in a war can feel fun and camaraderie and like, woo, this is my side and I'm having a blast. But like, it is showing all these ugly truths about war. And it's doing it through the lens of people who are just trying to capture a moment, like capture a vibe, observe human nature without passing judgment, just be a part of it, record it for other people. And yeah, I don't know. I was confused by some of the choices, like the lack of much exposition at all. I felt, as with all Garland movies, that the characters were kind of predictable. Like, everyone, you know what they represent and where they're going to end up, because he just doesn't deal with human characters all that much. He deals with like ideas that characters happen to represent. And so like, yeah, I know what the Dunst idea is and what the Spaeny idea and what Wagner Moura is supposed to be like, and you have to just clue into that and be along for the ride. But I mostly thought it was a hypnotic, interesting ride that goes places I didn't expect and fully commits to the premise. So I don't think it was a knockout success by any means. Like, I think it is a kind of weird movie that is marketed all wrong for the story it wants to tell. But I was mostly impressed by what Alex Garland pulled off and shocked that he is tricking people into going to an IMAX to watch this.
I mean,
yeah.
It, like, as somebody who went to see an IMAX, because the choice was a tiny theater with 20 seats or an IMAX, and I'm glad I saw it in IMAX, because this is a big film, right? At the very least, like, having a jet, like, fly over your head, in an IMAX, it feels like a jet just flew over your head. You know what I mean? Like,
okay, I can imagine that.
It feels like you're there, which is a film. This is what one of the things this film's kind of do. So I was originally going to see this opening night, so Thursday night, and like sort of last minute, Jamie decided that she wanted to see it as well. So I switched and was able to get the IMAX tickets for Sunday night. So I had a few days of this movie being out, and I don't normally pay attention to stuff, but the nature of being online, I became privy to some of the discourse around this film, talking about, you know, like Alex Garland is playing, as you said, visually with a lot of stuff that is heavy and has a lot of significance behind it, and the film is not trying to deal with that. And I think that is actually an incredibly smart thing to do, because there is no level of exposition that you could add to this film that wouldn't feel on the nose and directly speaking to this time. And what Alex Garland has done is created a theoretically the only way this film doesn't remain timeless is if there is an actual civil war, modern civil war. You know what I mean? Like, because by not tying it to any one administration or any one like current moment exact thing and not alluding to very specific things and not having characters say things that seem to be alluding to something. He's not placing this in an exact moment in time and just a theoretical modern setting. And I think that, you know, this film is exactly what he wanted to present, right? Which is the take of what would it be like to have a, like, we watch, okay, even forgetting the fact that like most of the war films we watch are not in the United States, right? But we've even seen like silly action movies where the White House is being there's an entire series of films about the White House being stormed in various ways. And when you watch those films, it feels like a wild, crazy action movie where you're like, oh my God, isn't this crazy? They're driving a limousine across the White House lawn and firing rocket launchers out of it. You know, like you're kind of having fun with it. And this film is like, what if we just showed what it's like to observe this from the ground, but not from the vantage point of the soldiers? There's no one person that we're going like, hoorah, right, this is the guy.
We're not rooting for anyone.
Like nobody's saying lines like, you know, you can die for your country, I'm going to live for mine and shit like that. Yeah. Like, you know, this is a film that is purely about the observation and seeing what this looks like if there were a civil war to happen. Not who are the personalities behind it, but what is just the day-to-day individual engagements from a really, really visceral way. And I think that the film is incredible, like for what it's trying to do. You know, when that first trailer dropped, I was like, oh shit, this movie's going to be great. I was super stoked for it. And I don't know if I correctly recalibrated before sitting down to watch it because I had seen a little bit of the discourse, but I was like, all right, let's just see what we're going to get. And I walked in and I sat down and I was like floored constantly watching this film because there's just this, it's a visceral, like emotional reaction to seeing some of this stuff. And it's not because it's the characters that I'm following. It's just let me show you what it's like to point my camera at something this senseless and this like, you know, not to call back to a recent review, but no one wins in a fight, Steven. This is really a film just about watch this senseless violence between two sides of one country. Doesn't matter which side you're currently, you know, embedded with at any point in time. Just look at the tragedy of seeing people fight within the streets within the United States with heavy artillery and like this kind of thing. And like I said, like the IMAX experience was amazing simply because of the sound, like feeling those like individual skirmishes and just feeling that reaction. Like it's a film that constantly had me like, it was like a different kind of, it wasn't just like an emotional, like, oh, this is a sad thing happening. It was just the awe of seeing like bodies everywhere and kind of like, you know, it didn't necessarily feel like just a normal war film. It felt like a grounded, realistic, just see the impact of an individual bullet. And I don't know, there's something about it that like I would just constantly like, not even like, maybe it's, I forget exactly the word you used a second ago, but it's like, I was just kind of like riding whatever this film was giving me. And I was like, holy shit, like every single time a photo is taken and like you get that snap, that could be a cheesy moment. Right. But like for me, every time I saw one of those stills, it did exactly what it was trying to do. And I was like, God damn it, dude, this is fucking incredible. Yeah.
I am like, one reason I feel confused reviewing this is when I watched this movie, I gave it 3.5 stars and a heart, which is like pretty good. Like that's what I give it. It's like, yeah, I like it. I think there's some problems, but I like it. And I am trying now to recall what didn't work for me, because even the act of talking about this movie immediately makes me respect it. Yeah. Because it is doing something very interesting. And I had also seen some of the take on the internet ahead of time of how it was trafficking in incredibly heavy imagery and then not dealing with it at all. And I get where that comes from. I get why people feel that way. I think the missing ingredient there is like what that take gets wrong is this movie might not be dealing with the content of a civil war, the why, the people behind it, the rise of fascism, any of that. But it is very much using that imagery to talk about how it feels to take in incredibly heavy imagery. And you need incredibly heavy imagery to have that conversation. It's like it feels like an impressionistic way of reckoning with horrors of modern time. And it's doing it, like you said, in a timeless way where it isn't trying to pinpoint one specific thing or have a clear point of view. It is just saying, like, look at this. Look at the impact of a bullet. Look at the feeling of man turned against man. Look at the fear. You know, let's examine it. And I think it is very heavy in what it chooses to portray, but I actually think it is a quite morally sound movie in the way that he decided to construct it. And so I am totally fine. Maybe the morally sound is too strong a word, but like I'm totally fine with his choices with all of that.
Yeah.
If there is a sour note for me, and maybe one reason I left it not feeling the high that I felt the whole time is I kind of think that movie of look at what a civil war does to people, look at how it feels to be a photojournalist, how it feels to be observing all of this havoc. I feel like the ending, like the last 25 minutes or so, don't do any service to that story, and it's like it course corrected into being about the Civil War at the very end in a way that I just didn't. When the movie ended, I felt missing something. Like I didn't feel like I saw a satisfying arc for the movie's idea of itself. I felt like I saw 2/3 of a dreamy meditation on the horrors of what we can do to one another and the horrors of trying to observe it, and then an ending that almost felt like it was, if not picking a side, at least suddenly in the heat of battle for battle's sake rather than for the pain that violence inflicts on you. I don't know. I don't know how to express it. It just feels like it was doing something very different at the end, and I have not wrapped my head around what that was for.
Yeah, I don't think you're totally wrong, given the last photograph we see in the film. Mm-hmm. However, I think the second to last photograph we get is sort of the point, right?
You mean there are batches of photos? You mean the second to last batch of photos,
the
right?
second to last batch of photos. Yeah.
So I would just say, I know what you're getting at, but that is an example of the obvious thing all characters are aiming toward at the beginning of the movie that just makes me not like that payoff that much.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to me, to sort of rephrase a little bit, is that in the world where we are in this state, even for people documenting this thing that is happening, there is nothing left to really document because it's all the same, right? There's no reason to keep doing it because we all know this is the state of things and the message has been received. We know it's going, nothing we can do to do it. But there is one last thing that can happen. And this is really about a journey towards that one last thing. And the way the film ends does exactly what you're complaining about to the overall audience for the people who are in that scene. But I think the real thing is the achieving of the one last... It's like this entire film is about somebody trying to get to Everest, to get to the peak of Everest, right? And then they may or may not get there. Right. And that is a journey because this film is, like Alex Garland is being the war photographer in this film, right? He is choosing what to point his camera at in the same way these characters are choosing what to point their camera at. And it's like, he is not concerned with why is there a civil war, why the fuck is California and Texas aligning? Why does California apply the name the Western Forces, but Texas applies the 2-star flag to their to being the 1-star state? All that stuff is just there for flavor of the environment he's trying to create. He's not trying to actually explain why certain groups of people are aligned together and what is their unique thing that brings them together. He is really just purely saying so if I can reduce a bunch of Alex Garland's work to like simple ideas and it's like Ex Machina, right? Is like, what if the Turing test, but you're kind of attracted to it, right?
Yeah.
Devs is like, what if computing power was so high that we could track every single atom in existence, and that allows us to create the world's best machine learning model that can predict everything that's ever happened, right? Like, you know, they're like all that kind of stuff. And this is sort of like, let's say there was a civil war. How would it get documented, right? This is just purely like, what if you were the person holding the camera? What would your camera see? He's not interested in any of the story behind why a civil war would or wouldn't happen. Sure. He's purely interested in showing a civil war in progress, and that's it. Like, even there's a character in the film that's like, even if X happens at the end of this movie, that doesn't matter because there's a bunch of other stuff, right? So I think that like what he's doing is so unconcerned with the existence of a civil war and just purely about if there was a war happening on American soil. Like, he could have also done a movie where another country is invading, but it would probably be harder to sell that movie overseas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. He's definitely not interested in a civil war. I mean, civil war just happens to be a clearer metaphor for brother turning against brother, right? But that the harm that people can do to each other can be captured in any kind of violence. And I totally agree. He isn't. Garland's whole thing is not being interested in more than the idea, right? Like, that's like his vibe, and I love that vibe. And one other hallmark of, I guess I can't say many of his movies because Ex Machina very much resolves. But a hallmark of like Annihilation and Devs and Men, at least, is that his movies they kind of build and build to increased chaos, and the chaos eventually overwhelms whatever signal or plot you had. And that's like kind of what I'm used to with him. He like zooms in on this idea, and the more intense and chaotic the idea gets, the more nothing makes sense anymore. And this movie, I won't spoil how it ends, but it definitely resolves. And it, like you said, there's an arc. A character wants to do this. They either get there or they don't. The end. And I just felt like tonally, the last 25 minutes of the movie, they felt like Annihilation of like, we are sending into chaos and madness and nothing makes sense anymore. But then plot wise, it was actually giving me the most like straightforward fulfillment of the story. I don't know. It was more plot satisfying than it makes sense for this movie to be to me. And I think a part of it too is, I think the goal of this movie is to highlight how it feels to specifically to photograph war or photograph chaos. He tries to make it be about the news, but it's clear he doesn't care about journalists. Like, we have a journalist here and we never once see them do journalism or any output of what they would do or why they are there. The only moment of actual journalism is a punchline at the very end.
Which goes back to like what you were saying about like, that's clearly for an audience who just sat through a lot. Like, you asked the audience for a lot and you're like, all right, I'll break you off a little piece at the end.
Exactly. But yeah, like he's making a movie about the act of being the beholder, the witness of everything, being the camera. And the story he is telling is really about living in that space of how does it feel to witness. Let's use that as a way of showing you this imagery and kind of meditating on what it feels to look at the details. By the end, it feels like it wanted to be Nightcrawler or something, of like the burrowing of obsession or the way that it causes you to focus only on this. And I don't know, it like became a character piece, and I don't feel like the characters are strong. I don't think it should have become a character piece. And there's just something about it where I feel like the first 2/3 of the movie were like, fucking A, you are going for it. You're doing it. You're doing this meditative idea-based approach to filmmaking. And then the end just felt like it is kind of trying to please anyone who came to watch it for any reason. And I don't think it succeeds in that, personally.
Yeah. I think in a way, just that that ending is so visceral that like the film becomes something else. But what it becomes is like a thing that just and part, you know, once again, part of it is sitting in IMAX where it feels like I am being shot at, and when vehicles rush by, you're like jumping. Like Jamie reached into her purse and pulled out earplugs. I'll ask her if it's okay to leave that in. But like,
she's smart to have them with her. I have multiple times, like in theaters where it was just cranked up too high, like clearly by accident. I have put my AirPods on noise canceling mode and put them in my ears to try to dampen the sound a little bit.
I definitely was checking my watch to see if like the ear decibel meter thing was going off, which I guess is, if it's not getting sustained for 30-minute intervals, I don't think it trips the sensor. But anyways, but yeah, it was so intense that I was just like, I mean, you know, it makes like Compound assaulting like in like Zero Dark 30 and stuff look like fucking like kids playing in the sandbox. You know, like it's just incredibly intense in a way where you're just like, Jesus. And that's the thing, is it doesn't feel like a heightened reality. It feels realistic. Like this is what it would be like to storm these locations in this way. And you know, it's not a thing about characters like, Jimmy, he's down, oh my god, like nobody's calling out the name of people who are being shot, you know, except for the three characters when they're like, oh my god, you gotta run here, like those three characters are talking to each other. But it's like there's just this indiscriminate nature of this is just like, this is what we're doing, we are storming this place, these different groups of people are shooting at each other, and it's not a, like, it's very matter of fact, right? This is what it takes to do this thing, this is happening on this date, we're just here to document. And you know, like you know, there is that little bit of Hurt Locker, like you were saying, where it's like the thrill of this chase, but also there's just something different about it because it doesn't it feels more grounded and less heightened, and it feels just more like a Jesus Christ, like I just kept walking, like when I walked out of the theater, I just kept going like, that was fucking intense. And like I didn't have like a lot of words to say about it. It was mostly just like, that was something, that was 2 hours of fucking something. You know what I mean? And I really think that like he had an idea of what he wanted to do and he fucking executed on it. And I think that it's not going to be for everybody, but I think it's a miscalibration to what he's trying to do. And maybe you can recalibrate to what he's trying to do and still not like this film. But for me, in real time, I was like, fucking, he's doing something, and I think it's spectacular, and I'm totally on board. Like, one of the questions I wrote down was like, did he have a responsibility to do something else with this material? And I'm the guy who usually says, if you're going to play with this imagery, fucking say something about it, because I don't know, but like he was saying something about it in the consumption of it, not the overall state of the world that would lead to this. And like, I was kind of like, oh, like this is the way you don't say something about it while saying something about it.
Right. I agree with that. I do not. I have had that feeling about movies before of you needing a responsibility to pay off the heavy imagery you're using. Sicario 2 was an example where I thought like it woefully did not pay off the heavy imagery that it used. This movie does, for the reason you mentioned. Like, he just isn't saying the kind of... He isn't giving the sort of message that people want, which is a why, or a this is what right is and this is what wrong is. Yeah. But he is giving a message, and the message is this is how it feels to be numbed by this stuff. And that is very different from, like, if Michael Bay trafficked in this imagery to make, like, a thrill ride, right? Yeah. This is a movie that is, like, somber about its thrills, and I think it succeeds in that in a way that is... Yeah, I've absolutely no problem with any of that.
Well, Stephen, Michael Bay sure as hell wouldn't use the American flag in that way.
That's true. Yeah.
say what you want about Michael Bay. He respects the American flag. It only ever flaps in the wind triumphantly.
He sure does. He probably wouldn't also make a movie where they casually mention that the U.S. government in the Capitol will shoot journalists on sight. He probably whatever the official government is, he would make be the good guys.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's I'm honestly just kind of stunned by the movie, I think, which is good. It's a good thing for a movie to do. It's a lot. I think it is successful where it matters, which is it definitely communicates that point and that vibe. There's a combination of the ending, and when I say ending, to be clear, I'm talking about like one of the biggest set pieces, and I'm not talking about like, oh, I didn't like the last 2 minutes of the movie. I'm saying like it crescendos to a thing that didn't totally work for me in the context of Garland's mission. And I also just think, again, he does not need to know how to write characters. He does not care about human characters. But sometimes I feel like this movie forgets that and wants to be the Hurt Locker, wants to be these human character studies. Yeah. And I think it is better when it focuses on the idea, because that is what he is fucking awesome at. But yeah, he did the thing, and I have to respect that.
Yeah. There is one thing that I want to say. It's sort of a joke, and I think it's vague enough that it's not really spoilery. But if you were embedded photojournalists, like you are actually truly embedded with a warring force, where like you are them, you're riding on their vehicles, you're with them, and you've been with them for a long time, and you're getting ready to do this one big mission. And then some of your friends from another group who are just driving around in their SUV get to come along right there at the end. Would you be a little bit like, yo, this is my scoop. What are you doing?
Probably, yeah. I will say some of that stuff was hard for me to swallow in any kind of actual belief that these are human beings with a motivation, but I didn't really care about their motivation at that point, so it was fine. I will say, without giving any spoilers, by the way, Stephen McKinley Henderson has a fucking awesome moment in this movie. I was definitely here for it.
Which one is that?
He's the older dude that was along for the ride. Yeah. He has a really awesome entrance, basically, that one of the times I truly did not see it coming at all, and it paid off.
Yeah. All right. We're through the intensity, Steven. Should we get to our verdicts for this film?
Sure.
All right. If you were going to either say must-see, recommend with a caveat, wait for rental, pass with a caveat, or a must-avoid, what would you give it?
You know, it's funny because this conversation has made me want to tip this into must-see territory, just because I truly do feel like impressed by what Garland did. But I also know when I walked out of the theater, I was like, I like it, but there are flaws, 3.5 stars. And I want to honor the feeling I had closest to watching it. So I'm going to say recommend with a caveat. I think Alex Garland is doing something very interesting. There are the clear caveats, which are you have to calibrate to it. This is not the movie that the trailers are maybe making you think you are going to see. But I also do have some artistic caveats that I think the movie is confused about what it is by the end in a way that sends a mixed message in what is otherwise a very clean and clear meditation on a difficult concept. So I don't think it's perfect, but I do think it is really damn well executed, and I don't think it's reckless in its use of imagery. I think it makes total sense for what it's trying to do.
Yeah, in a world where I didn't know about the discourse, this would just be like straight up must-see, and I think for me, it is a must-see. I acknowledge that not everybody is going to accept this film for what it's trying to do. I think it went for a very specific thing and executed on it perfectly, and I love it for that, and I really, really enjoyed it. So for me, it's still a must-see, but just let people know I do acknowledge that your mileage may vary. Your 500-something mileage may vary. Which It kind of makes sense as a joke for anybody who watched the movie.
Yep. One of those completely unnecessary countdowns that movies sometimes decide to have.
Yeah. But anyways, where was I going? I don't know. Oh yeah, to the point about the trailer. It is funny. It's not just that like the trailer is semi-misleading. There are like news broadcast dialogues which you do not hear in this film. Like you hear really garbled, broken speeches from the president over the course of this film, but all these like news broadcasts that you hear at the beginning of this trailer are not in this film at all. And the one speech that you watch in the trailer, you only see him rehearsing for it.
Yep.
At the beginning of this film, which is it is 100% clear misdirect. This film is selling one specific thing. It's almost like the people who were prepping the trailer were like, "Oh, you didn't make the movie we thought you were going to make. Audiences might not like this."
Yeah, or A24 was like, "Oh, we spent more on this than any movie we ever have spent money on before. Let's hedge our bets."
Yeah, and that was just the ammunition budget.
Yep.
But anyway,
like I really think they kind of assumed the Garland heads would come out no matter what, so they had to cater trailers to the people who would not otherwise see an Alex Garland film, which means you're getting a completely different story presented to you.
Yeah. But, you know, it's theoretically in the same ballpark as what this film is doing. It's just the trailer puts the vantage point on people who are not the characters of this film.
Yes.
So, but very much enjoyed this film. But hopefully people very much enjoyed us talking about the film.
One tiny little thing I want to get in at the end as we outro. I love Nick Offerman. I have no ill will for him. Alex Garland seems to have latched onto him, and I think in Devs he worked because his kind of stiltedness and being good-humored, but then also saying dark things like fit with that character. I don't really buy him as a president, and I kind of think he was a weak point in this movie for me. There's not a lot of him, and so it's totally fine. But I'm not really on the Offerman as a dramatic actor train, and I just need to plant my flag there. My 2-star flag.
You need to watch The Last of Us, Steven.
I know. I'm not saying I'm in principle believe he couldn't be a dramatic actor, but this use of him didn't work for me.
Yeah, I'm just saying you'll be fully brought around if you watch The Last of Us.
Cool. Will I then like him as the president here, or?
I don't know if it'll help you there, but
because he kind of rings more as like an NPC in a video game in this movie to me. Like he doesn't seem like a character. He seems like a bot.
Steven, you remember the film The Rock, right?
Sure.
You know when Ed Harris's crew is starting to no longer believe in his abilities in the bluff that it seems like he might be trying to play here in this case?
I remember one very specific moment when they truly stopped believing in him. Yeah.
Well, there's one moment where Ed Harris goes,
"Stand down, Captain."
Stand down, Captain!
He like says stand down twice, but the second time his voice cracks because he's like nervous.
Yeah.
The Nick Offerman we're getting in this film is the voice cracky stand down captain, not the authoritative stand down captain. And I think that he's playing exactly what he needs to play in this moment. And for me, it kind of worked.
Okay.
But
so you're saying he doesn't go home and fuck the prom queen? He's whining about his best.
I was gonna say he's not a winner, but I guess that's a spoiler. Carla was the prom queen. Anyways, yeah, we're done with this review, Steven. So if people want to find you throughout the week, where can they do that?
People can find me at Threads as S. David Miller on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or wherever social media is found, or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or ChristopherIRL on a number of social platforms. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com, where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at twitter.com/spoilerwarning, facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io, so hopefully you're enjoying that. That music's playing. We are going to head out, and we'll be back soon with another
That's all, folks.
We'll be back soon with another review. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
And if you don't hear from me, I'll meet you in heaven when I die.